Hello and welcome. We're going to work with the filter gallery in this particular session, and as I always like to do, we'll also be building off things that we've already seen. So other videos that I've created, we're actually building off that. For instance, in this particular scene we have folks sunbathing on the Florida beach, and the only thing I care about in this particular image is the sky, the ocean, the sand, and the boats. So we're going to eliminate those other things in the image, and we already have seen several ways to do these types of things. I'm going to introduce a little bit more today on cleaning things up, and let's get started. So you know me, I like to make a copy of the background layer. You never know what you're going to run into, and you can always go right back to it if you want. You can also run a series. I'm going to do a Control J here to copy that layer completely. Control J, Command J on a Macintosh. If you ran a filter on this layer now, we could still let part of it show through the original image. Right here, we could let it show through by simply employing a mask on this layer. So there are several reasons why I like to use additional layer instead of the original background layer. But let's move along. We have some seaweed fresh out of the ocean down here. We don't really need that. It's kind of distracting in the overall image if we look down there. There's, again, several ways we can get rid of some of this stuff. Remember, if you're close to edges, often using the content aware fill and things like that, the patch tool will create a humongous blur. So let's just try it, see what happens using the patch tool. We'll just make a loose selection around this glob here of junk, and we'll just click it and drag it over here to an area that's good. And you see the preview that's showing right here that we've got a clean area, and we let go and see what happened. We've got a rainbow of schmear right here. For right now, we'll leave that gone. We'll clean that up, but let's see if we can do any better on this one. We'll just move it down here. See, we also got a smear there as well. So let's do Control-Alt-Z, Command-Option-Z on a Mac, and do that a few times here to get back to where we were. Control-D, Command-D on a Mac to get rid of the marching ants. So we see that doesn't work so well. Well, this is really pretty easy stuff to cover up for even the rubber stamp tool, the clone stamp tool. So let's just turn it on, make sure your opacity is up. We need a soft brush, so click in here, make sure your softness is on, hardness is all the way to 0. And we need a pretty good sized brush. You can move it out there to see the preview. And see, that looks okay. So let's just click on the gray to get rid of that box. We've got a little preview of this guy here for some reason. I guess my mouse was there a few minutes ago. So let's just hold down the Alt key, Option key on a Mac, and we can clone or sample right here to clone in this area right here, and you see a little preview. Now if you don't see that, you might want to go to your preferences, edit, and down. You can't see it on here, but preferences there, and you can click on cursors. And in the cursors, I always have mine on normal brush tip. Actually, it should be on full brush tip, sorry. And show crosshairs. This actually shows you the edges of the tool if you use the full size, and the crosshair helps with accuracy. And then I always have precise turned on, and we'll just click OK. And so you see the rough edges of my brush right now, but there should be a nice softness there. And I always like to click on my brushes panel and make sure there isn't anything else turned on. It's okay if really the one to really look out for is shape dynamics. You don't want that turned on. but everything's turned off, so let's just get rid of that. And again, I'm going to sample over here. My brush is really big now. Sample again. I'm holding down the Alt key, Option key on a Mac, and left clicking on the mouse, and just come over here and paint that in. Now notice this part of the beach might be a little bit brighter. Actually, it doesn't look like it to me, but it could be. In your scene, an area could be lighter than where you're cloning to or rubber stamping to, and then it's going to look pretty obvious. So that's a great time to use these tools, is to keep the shadowing and everything accurate. In this case, on these edges, that doesn't work so well. So let's Alt click or Option click again and just fill that area in. And I like to sample multiple times from multiple places, because otherwise you build up a pattern. And so we can just click over here. This is not a tough area to really fill in. Always keep an eye on this right here. For some reason, magically during if you do quite a bit of cloning, this will all of a sudden be checked. And what happens is if you don't keep resampling with your Alt Option key, this comes on and it starts following where you're painting, and can be quite a problem. Let me see if I can show you real quick. So if we have the align turned on, and let's say I'm going to cover this boat up, so I just click down here in the sand and I paint, and I let go of the mouse and I come up here to paint again. Notice that the crosshairs just below my brush, that's where my sampled area is from, is staying right with the brush. So it's sampling everywhere my brush moves to. Let me Control Alt Z that a few times to get rid of that stuff. And if I turn the aligned off and Option or Alt click, I paint in some here and I let go and paint in again, it's still sampling from back where I originally told it to sample from, which is usually my intent. I don't want it to keep up with the brush and sample from a new area, which it will do if I sample here and paint here, let go. It's sampling from a new area each time. See, it's so believe me, you want that aligned usually unchecked, but somehow, like I said, it will magically turn itself on. Now I've had that happen in multiple versions of Photoshop where that would recheck itself. So I'm going to revert here real quick instead of undoing a bunch and do another Control J. And I'm going to zoom in on the lady here. I'm holding down my Control key, that'd be Command key on a Mac, holding down my space bar and left clicking to zoom in, because I want to get rid of these sunbathers. They're not going to help my image at all. So if I were trying to promote this as a tourism image, then certainly sunbathers are very appropriate, but in this case, not so much. So what I'm going to do, and I haven't demoed this before, I'm going to first take her head out of it. So what I'm going to do is use the lasso tool, and I'm going to select her head. Go right along this edge where the boat is. Now what this will help me do is easily clone good material in here without this anything else being affected. And let me undo that real quick, and let's feather this by say 3 or 4 pixels. And now again I'll make so this will be a little bit feathered, which will help out the cause. We don't want any straight lines around anything. So now if I turn my rubber stamp on, or my clone stamp tool, make my brush smaller, left bracket key, and if I Alt click right in here and paint anywhere else, nothing happens, right? Nothing at all is cloning. Clone up here, clone from down there to down here. It doesn't do a thing. But if I clone in here, it works quite well. So I'll sample here and paint right in here. And notice it's not painting anywhere outside that line. So I can sample from both sides, fill that in. I can come up here and sample from the edge of the boat, come over here, paint, come over here, paint, come down here, paint. So you get the idea. We've protected our area pretty nicely, and her head is now out of the boat. She's looking a little funny at this point, but we did a nice job cleaning that up. So now we need to basically do something similar with the rest of the folks here. If you try to use the patch tool again, let's just see. Let's turn it on. Click up here. Just trying to get rid of these baskets and stuff, bring it up to the good area. We got a little bit of smearing going on down there. Let's just try making a selection out of that. Just doesn't like those edges. That doesn't look bad at all. I can even click and get rid of this shadow. And we're running up against parts of this boat that's in the foreground, so I think we're going to really see some blurring when I try to do this. Just see. Yeah, bad job. So we'll Control-Alt-Z that, Command-Option-Z on a Mac a couple of times to get back. So again, we can protect this boat by making a selection around it. So let's just go here and start drawing. This is one of those things that if you had a brush, it would be easier. Now I'm going to use my Alt key or Option key on a Mac and kind of subtract some of this junk that I did include, because we don't want to clone over an area that's good. So we can just kind of resize everything that we don't really need to clone into. And it's already feathered by 3 pixels, so we shouldn't have to worry about straight lines being an issue. We could go ahead and select all of them, the things in here. I kind of like doing a piece at a time just to allay any fears of getting carried away, I guess. So let's turn on the rubber stamp tool, clone stamp tool they call it these days, and we'll make the brush bigger. And I'm going to Alt click. Now I think it's a good idea when you're cloning to actually create an extra layer. So I'm going to click on the new layer icon and I can call this cloning. And Alt click up here or Option click, and then we can go in here and start painting. Now probably if I would have taken out the 3 pixel feather right in here, there wouldn't be that little blurriness. That's what's keeping us from getting in there completely. We can clone from up there. But it's not doing a too bad a job. We could have cut that down to maybe 1 pixel feather or 2. It's not doing too bad. Okay, then we can do a Control D and see what our results are. You see that little bit of blur going on right there. So I'm going to make my brush smaller, and sample from right in here, and I'm just going to paint right along that edge. Remember, if it's a straight line, we can click once, go to the other end, hold down the shift key, and click again, and it'll paint automatically in a straight line. So we can move up the line, so to speak, and we can make another selection with the lasso tool and tackle more of the people that are in here, trying to be careful not to eliminate any boat. And then I'm just going to let go right at that point. It'll snap over. We want this back in there, so I hold down the Alt key, Option key on a Mac, and that will subtract from my selection. And I'm going to undo this and change that to 1 pixel. I really need to do the whole selection over, otherwise that 1 pixel is still going to be in there. So let me more hurriedly move along here, and I can fine tune it. So holding down my Alt key, go up through here, and holding, if I want to add to it, I can hold my shift key down, and I need to subtract a little bit of boat right here. I need to include, that looks okay. Let's go ahead and start. Let's subtract this area right here. All right, now clone stamp, and come over here, make my brush bigger. We're still cloning on this clone layer, and we come in here and paint away. Again, I suggest sampling multiple times. Don't try to fill things in from one sampling. You see we're getting a lot closer to our area down there. It's not leaving traces along edges of things now. So the 1 pixel feather did help. Just sample again. Sample from here, here. I know it's quicker if you don't sample all over the place, but I guarantee you if you don't do multiple samplings, you're going to get a pattern buildup that people will be able to tell very quickly that it's been a cloned area. So I'm going to do a Control D, and now we can tackle this area down here where the beach blanket is. So again with the lasso tool, come up in here and select this stuff. Missed a little bit, so I'm going to hold down my shift key to add to it. Alright, so I'm just going to fill once again with the sand. So I turn on my clone tool, and here we go. I'll tell you, it's nice not to have to worry about destroying stuff as you're cloning. So we've got that looking pretty decent where these folks originally were, right? Turn that back on. And we can do the same thing with these people here. And as bright as the whole area is, we can actually go about anywhere in this image and fill even the water. And unless you've got even lighting in an image, you just can't do that with the clone stamp. But if we, not even bothering with the selection, we can just start cloning, resample here, so I can get this without creating a pattern. Oops, got some sand there. Again, I can go over here and sample. So let's just say I want to sample right in here. So I Alt or Option click here and come back over, and I can click here and paint in. You see it's got a little bit different color, and I'm not resampling. I'm just, now I let go of the mouse and I'm painting that in. I'm going to do a little bit better here in a second, promise you. I'm going to sample from here, fill in some of that area. Now, when I went over this earlier, I actually did clone with a selection around it. Sometimes it's the only way to go, and since you're the artist and you can, you know these tools, you can clean it up however you want to. Now, to kind of fill in some of this and make it a little darker, or a little lighter, I guess you'd say, with this green that I brought in, we just switch the opacity and we start painting with this little area that we have here, and just kind of go over that, and that will lighten that area up. And we'll clone that person out with that. Let's move this over, and I'm option clicking, alt click on a PC, and we can just paint until they're gone. With the opacity down to 44%, it doesn't fill in all at once, but you have a lot of control over when to stop. And we get along there. And something's back there in the background, so let's make that smaller. Alt click, option click on a Mac. Let's run this up to 100%. And we can select or do a selection around him. And it doesn't have to be a great one. We just want to protect this. Go around there and add a little bit, holding down the shift key so I can get the head without that being a problem. Switch back to the clone tool, make my brush bigger, not that big. Alt click or option click on a Mac. Resampling. Resample, resample, paint from the sand. There we go. Control D to turn that off. I'm going to copy some from right here to kind of fill that in better. So sample from there, come over here, and that horizon line looks better. Now, in our image, we have people out here. I'm going to get rid of them as well. So I don't need to make a selection around them, fortunately. And just clone there. And clone that one out. Sample from there. Let's do a Control 0 to see the whole thing. We've got to get rid of the seaweed down here. When I reverted, I got that back. So I'm just going to sample from there. Sample from over there. And what happened? Right up here. Look at this. It checked itself. It's now unaligned. Told you. I've had it happen to me so many times it's not even funny. It can be aggravating when you're really working on some details. That's not what you want to come in there all of a sudden. So it's a good time. You know, we've gotten rid of all of this stuff in here and over there. Guess what time it is? It's time to save the file. File, save as. I like to put mine on the desktop as I work on it. Be sure and save it as a PSD file. And I'm going to give this one a slightly different name. And save. So now, there's my Sailboat Filters 2 file. And I'm in the cloning mode, so I'm in the cloning mood. So now as we look at this, we've got a pretty decent image here of the sailboats. Got a nice water picture there, area, and we got a lot of blue sky. So this probably isn't the best photograph in the world, speaking in terms of horizon lines, perspective, rule the thirds and stuff like that, because we probably are closer to having this, and well, it's less than a third. Let's put it that way. If we did that, it's close to a third. The horizon line is, but ideally this would be 2/3 sky, 1/3 down here. or vice versa, 2/3 here, 1/3 at the top. Anyhow, we're going to now experiment with filters. So we've got the cloning done. We've got all of that stuff done. Let's go ahead and bring it down to layer 1 by using Control E. That's Command E on a Macintosh. So now it's all right there in our new layer. Now we can make a copy of this if we want to. Remember, this layer has everything on it. This layer is the clean layer, so we can do a Control J and just have a nice clean layer copy to work with. So now's another good time to do. We've saved it, so now all we have to do is do a Control S, Command S on a Macintosh, and that automatically will save it to that file name. So it overwrote the first save and put this down, because if we had to revert right now, we don't want to revert and lose a couple of layers and all that stuff. So we're current. Everything we've got is recorded. Let's go now to the filters and down to the filter gallery. Now there are lots of things in here. Let me resize this real quick. It's an enormous dialog box. And you see our image is way too big, so I'm going to do a Control 0, so I don't like that. There we go. Resizing a lot is always fun. I'm going to try again. There. We can run all kinds of filters in here. Here are the brush strokes. You see these different headers. And so we can incorporate anything in here we want. It sometimes takes a little time, depending on your processing speed. And it's got to remember, these things are reading and writing to your hard drive all the time too. So that takes a little time. So you can see what each one of these does, and we're not going to go through everything. Just wanted to show you a couple of examples. I think that's makes a great image myself. So some of these will do the trick for you, and you don't have to do anything else. But let me cancel. Well, let me just click OK. Now we've got this layer 1 it's permanently changed. I can't double click on that and go back into the filter gallery. I have to run a filter right over the top of it again. So now if I do the Sumi, click OK, it's right on top of this. So if I do a Control Alt Z, that's what we had before, and Control Z to get back. Now we've got two filters on top of each other, and we can't really, work with them separately at all. So I'm going to do a Control Alt Z a couple of times and show you something else. Ideally, what we need to do at this point is go to Filter and down to Convert for Smart Filters. It comes on and tells you this will be re-editable. Click OK. And now if you look in the Layers palette, you see the little icon here. This denotes this is now a Smart Filter layer. So we can go up and experiment with filters all day long and not make a permanent change. So let's go Filter, Filter Gallery, and we can make all of these changes. Let's just let me see if I can get back here again to a smaller view. Let's go down to Style, Glowing Edge. So we've got the glowing edge, and I click OK, and we come in here, we got the glowing edge. If I want to, I don't really like that so much, I click right here where it says Filter Gallery, double click it, and I can go back up to Artistic and say Colored Pencil. Control minus to get that back in the window. So now we can click OK again, and we've got Colored Pencil. It's the same image. We haven't permanently destroyed anything. Even better, double click the filter gallery, Control minus to make it fit again. Do one more time. I can also go over here to this box down here below is the new effect layer. If I click that, it lets me put yet another layered filter on here. Now, because it's on colored pencil, it created another colored pencil which did twice as much colored pencil on that layer. But what I can do is go over here and click on palette knife, for example, and also run that filter with the colored pencil filter. So that's the way the palette knife looks just by itself, and the colored pencil together, and we click OK. And that's the image we have now. But again, we can say, well, we're not really crazy about that combo. Double click on the filter gallery, and we can actually come up to the colored pencil and hit the trash can. And let me do Command or Control minus. And now all we have is the palette knife filter on here. Well, let's see what Paint Daubs does. Now, I happen to like Paint Daubs a lot. So I've got that one turned on, and look at all the stuff I can do. I can sharpen that, and you see what happened right there in that sail. And I can change the brush size so things become a lot more dramatic. You can take that down, and like I say, depending on your computer setup, these things happen faster or slower. Also, we have in here all of the different filters are right in here under Paint Daubs. So if you want to experiment while you're in there, you certainly can. Let's go back up to the top. All of these choices, I'm going to go back to Paint Daub again, because I'm going to create a new effect layer, and I kind of liked what the smudge stick did a while ago. That's really harsh. Let's bring that down. So I've got double Paint Daubs, so I click on that to make one of them smudge stick. So I've got these two in combination. So I can change the stroke, highlight area, I can make that bigger or smaller, and I can change the intensity. Now let's click OK. These two are in combination with each other. We go over here, that's the effect we've got on top of this. What if we click on this? This is a mask. It created a mask for us. So now I can paint with black and let some of this under here show through. So if I come over here to the sail and start painting, notice my opacity is only at 34. So I can bring that back slowly. Let's say we want to reduce that a little bit more. You know, you can say I don't like that. I'm going to press the letter X to paint with white over here, and I want to bring that white back. Press X again. I can bring more of the sand back up. So we have a lot of control. Look at my mask over here. Let me make that bigger here, so you can see that bigger. See what's going on in the mask? So I can temporarily, if I right click on this mask, I can disable the layer mask, and you can see the full effect of the filters. And if I right click back on it, enable it. Well, guess what? Maybe I still don't like what I've got there. So all I have to do is click over here on this filter gallery twice, and I can bring that back up and do a Control minus a few times. And let's just say I really like the Paint Daubs the best. I'm going to get rid of the smudge stick. So I'm going to click the trash can, and I'm going to enlarge this a little bit, Control plus or Command plus, and let's just look at what the sharpness does and the brush size. So we can control how far, how fast that goes. Click OK, and again, if I click on the layer mask, I can bring back more, or press X to paint with white instead of the black, and more of that filter is going to be incorporated. So we have absolute control over all of these filters. Let me go back to the filter gallery. All of these filters are easily controlled with that mask, and coming back into the filter gallery, we can add all kinds of things. I like this effect too. It's kind of got outlines that make a lot more contrast. We can mess with the edge intensity. Remember, we can also paint to smooth those edges out with painting that mask. The edge thickness, run that back and forth, see what we like best. Let's click OK. Let's go back to this mask, paint with black. Let's switch that to black, and let's bring some smoothness to those edges by painting in. Let's go up here too. I like most of the effect that gave, especially down here. Let's make it some of these areas bigger. Control spacebar or Command spacebar on a Mac and click, and you can see all the neat little details that it's created. And we're just smoothing out this area up here, little at a time, because it's on 34%. If we do it at 100, you see very quickly what's going to happen. I think it's an awesome looking image. Let's go back down here and let's just paint some of this. Make it a little less sharp, noisy, whatever you want to call that. So you have all kinds of control over what's going on inside that filter. And again, anytime you want, double click that filter gallery and you can say, the poster edges, maybe that's not my favorite thing. Maybe I want rough edges. Click OK, and you see there's a different effect. Now we can still bring back the underlying layer or make the filter more prominent based on this layer mask. That's the beauty. So let's just disable that so we can see the overall filter, and you can see the edges of things based on that filter. Let's go back to the filter gallery, and maybe we could add one more filter. Let's add this. Let's add another filter. Let's add watercolor and click OK. So now you've got three combinations based on that filter, and we can right click and enable that filter, and you see the effect based on this mask. So if I turn the brush back on and paint in this mask, you can see how it can be changed very, very easily. I didn't mean to do that. Hang on. We are the masters of our domain, basically, when it comes to this, because that mask allows us to really control what goes on in that scene. And we disable the layer mask, and you see how dramatic that color or that filter combination is. We double click this filter gallery again, and we say, well, the rough pastels was cool, the underpainting was cool, this one's not so cool. Click OK, and you can see the difference that we have there just based on that. So you can go back and forth with different things in here all you want. Let's make that so we can view it. Some of them obviously are better than others, and you can really just go in here and really experiment with these different filters from right inside here. They can really be a lot of fun. Some of them, you wonder why it's even in there, but that's okay. That's what the experimentation is all about. We need to see what it can do. Now, you say, what possible good would this particular filter be? We click OK, and we can also go over here and experiment with blend modes. What if we change that to color? What if we change that to multiply? All of these things have a different effect too on the overall image. So the blend modes are awesome. Now also we've got the opacity change that we can do. So if we find something in the filter gallery, double click that again, that we like, we can keep tweaking it until it makes us a very happy camper. Happy, happy, happy. That's the key. All right, that wraps up this video. I hope this puts you in the experimenting mode because there's just a lot of stuff in here to tweak and have fun with. Okay? Talk to you all later. Bye-bye.